Hey, today we're going to talk a little bit about medieval Asia. So, this is kind of Asia during the time period of the Middle Ages, which is those 600s, 700s, 800s, leading into the 1100s, 1200s kind of era. The three main empires we're going to talk about are the Mongols, which expanded from China all the way into the West, including parts of Russia. Japan, which is a J-shaped archipelago off the coast of Korea. And China, which is in the same place it's always been, right between the Hoang-Hae and Yellow River. Now, China had been divided for many years in a time period called the Warring States period. It was divided into really these northern and southern dynasties, and there was lots of civil wars that created a lot of chaos amongst the Chinese people. Emperor Wen is able to unify China under the Sui dynasty using some of the things that we've talked about previously that really helped to create a strong government. He restores order by creating a unified law code. Remember, law codes are kind of important because they help to have everybody kind of working on the same page, knowing what the rules are, and he also makes changes to the overall government. However, he is assassinated by a general in his army, and they serve a military coup, and that seizes control and establishes the Tang dynasty. Now, the Tang are also trying to improve the government by going back to the tradition of a civil service exam. We talked about these before. Most of these civil service exams are based on Confucianism and are used to measure whether or not a person is merited for a position in the government by taking some sort of test. After the Tang dynasty, China is not reunified until the Song dynasty. So again, there's still quite a bit of political chaos here. The Song are able to reform centralized control by changing the government and really reforming the civil service exam to be based on Confucianism or those old moral ideas, respect of the family, order, things of that nature that are really going to help bring control back to China. There's quite a few major Chinese achievements during this time period that eventually are going to find their way to Europe, as we've talked about. Okay, the first of these is woodblock printing, which is going to allow for faster copying of text. They carved the actual text into the wood, covered it with ink, and then stamped it onto a new sheet of paper. The woodblock printing is what's going to inspire the printing press that kind of occurs at the late Middle Ages going into the Renaissance time period. Paper money is also going to be used because it's lighter and easier to use than coins, which is going to improve trade and also create a common currency, which is going to create more stability. Gunpowder was primarily used for fireworks in China and signals, such as along the Great Wall of China. They would use fireworks to kind of symbol an invasion or something like that. But it'll also start to be used for weaponry here pretty soon. And the compass. The compass has been talked about before with the navigation. It really helped with understanding what direction you were going, which is going to ultimately help travelers to get across the Atlantic Ocean to the New World. A lot of these Chinese achievements travel along the Silk Road. They're carried by the Mongols, who get them from the Chinese. And a lot of them end up in Europe and end up impacting Europe both during the Middle Ages and also during the Renaissance and the Age of Navigation. Now, the Mongols, we've mentioned them before. They were major attackers. They were super deadly. You can see in the picture down at the bottom, they traveled primarily on horses, and they were seen as like such a storm because the horses would allow them to travel very quickly. Northern China had been attacked by the Mongols for many years, and the Mongols actually started to become more aggressive under the leader Genghis Khan. Khan is the word for ruler, so you'll talk about Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan. Genghis is a person, Kublai Khan is the person, Khan is the word for ruler. The Mongols become united under Genghis Khan and they start to create an empire. They have this long-standing objective of taking over the world. They use really brutal tactics. They would burn entire villages and kill all of the inhabitants, including women and children, which was not a readily accepted tactic previous to this. Under Genghis Khan, the Mongols are able to conquer most of northern and central Asia, and they're going to continue to push farther to the west into the Middle East and almost to Europe. Under Kublai Khan, the Mongols are going to attempt to gain all control of China and Korea. In the picture, you can kind of see how far they were actually able to gain control. They were able to gain control of a vast majority of the Middle East, not including the Arabian Peninsula, and into Russia. One of the main ones we want to kind of talk about here is the Golden Horde. Okay, that was one of the time periods in which they were the most powerful, and they were able to continue to push farther into the west. At one point, the Mongol Empire does stretch from Eastern Europe all the way to Korea, which is on the far side of Asia. Kublai Khan, who is the next ruler, he is a descendant of Genghis Khan, starts the Yuan dynasty in China. So he essentially is able to gain complete control of China and declares himself the emperor of China. He's not seen very favorably by the Chinese because he does tax them very strenuously, and he does not allow them to serve in higher government positions. He only allows the Mongols to serve. But he does encourage trade, and he opens China to visitors, which is where we see Marco Polo traveling to China on his expedition. The Mongol Empire does spread from China to the Middle East, and it's considered a golden age when the empire was reunited under one ruler. The last empire we need to talk about is Japan. Japan is located on a mountainous archipelago off the coast of Korea. An archipelago is kind of a string of different islands. It's J-shaped, so it's very easy to recognize. Japan is very, very close to China and Korea. Because they are so geographically close, they are going to share a lot of cultural similarities, the biggest of which is Buddhism. However, their writing will look very similar, as well as their architecture. Lots of reds and very similar with the use of archways and things of that nature. The Japanese, before they had adopted Buddhism, practiced Shinto, or the way of the kami. The way of the kami was essentially nature gods that they would pray to. It doesn't have a formal text or structure, but they essentially built shrines like the one that's seen in the picture there to pray to the kami, and it emphasized natural features like the wind and water and nature. And also an emphasis on ancestors, which is why it is going to blend so well with Buddhism, who also has that emphasis on nature. Shintoism is the state religion, and it required worshipers to worship the emperor as a part of that. And it coexisted really, really well with Buddhism overall. Now that you've finished, make sure you go back and do the summary for your notes. Thank you very much.